Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Warwick F1 show. This is the 47th episode of the 2025 season, and we are back with another race to delve into because we've come off the back of the Mexican Grand Prix, which saw a change in the championship lead away from Oscar Piastri and into the hands of his teammate Lando Norris, who now has a 1 point advantage, a slender 1 point advantage at the top of the Drivers' Championship after a phenomenal weekend where he just seemed to be a cut above the rest. He was joined on the podium by a Charles Leclerc, who was chased down at the end of that race by Max Verstappen, with Oscar Piastri being finishing in fifth after making a somewhat decent recovery after what could only be described as, again, a massive underperformance on the Saturday qualifying. I'm your host again, Anwar, and I'm joined by the exact same group of people, the exact same cast as how we had for the preview, which means 5 predictions and 5 people who are accountable for the predictions they made, which is I'm excited for. I'm joined by Lucy and Daniel, my co-hosts, and then returning guests in Alex and Addy. So thank you all for joining me for this episode. Let's start by getting people to give me a rating for the race. We did a 3-word description. Let's go back to a rating. Addy, I want to start with you here. What would you put it out of 10?
7 for me.
Interesting. What's your justification for 7?
The first few laps were very chaotic, which is, in terms of pure entertainment, all great stuff. We had some great action here and there, some pretty shocking results in terms of where people ended up finishing. However, we'll get onto it later, but there were some decisions that were made that, let's just say, sort of ruined sort of the enjoyment of the race a bit. But we'll get to those later.
We will 100% get to those later, because I think that did bring up quite a bit of discussion. Daniel, how about you?
I'm inclined to go for an 8, actually. I take your point in that it probably could have been a 9 in my books, had the decision at the end not played out the way it was. But I think for a Mexico City Grand Prix, it was pretty good compared to recent years. Overtaking seemed to be easier than we've seen in the past, particularly 2022, which was supposed to be a good year for following, but just didn't work out that way for some reason, so it was good compared to that. We did have domination from the front, of course, which isn't the most entertaining. The pole sitters won the last 6 Grand Prix now, I think, in a row, so that just shows how important that is. But it was a great performance by Norris, so you can't really fault him for that. Great race, 8 out of 10.
Awesome. Alex, how about you?
I found this Grand Prix pretty interesting in the fact that the first couple of laps did shake the order a little bit, especially with the certain shenanigans involving Hamilton, Leclerc, Verstappen, etc. And my 3 words will probably be Verstappen, naughty boy, because, of course, we'll get to that later.
See, how about you? Where do you stand on this?
So where I stand on this, I would probably say that it was interesting. It was good. I mean, definitely compared to a lot of the races that we've had this season, and I'm still thinking of Singapore. It was very interesting and it was good to watch. I think there was a good mixture of action and a little bit of watching some strategies play out. I think obviously that would have been more interesting had we carried on in green flag racing right until the end, but I really wanted to see what, some people staying out and some people switching tyres was going to do, but that is me because I'm a bit of a nerd. What 3 words would I use to describe it? Do they have to be related to each other, or can they be standalone?
Just standalone words.
I would say probably Ferrari. I think they played a big role in this race, and in a positive way for once. I would say inconsistency. This is mainly from the FIA. I do have several bones to pick with them over this race. And I would say tension, because it felt like a race that was more building tension as opposed to having a lot going on with it.
I think I agree with Daniel on this. I actually probably would say this was an 8, because we, outside of the lead, which I think Norris kind of locked in from very early on in this Grand Prix, I thought there was a lot of entertainment behind. There were quite a few different storylines to keep track of. We had the kind of surprising level of strategy involved too, because I think they all outside of Antonelli, who I think it was pretty obvious he was going to have to 2-stop, they all decided to follow suit, and I think that did catch quite a few people by surprise, including me. So I like that, and then there was the storyline of Verstappen closing on Leclerc and seeing if that was going to work. So honestly, I thought it was overall a very good race. So I think an 8 out of 10 is probably what I would go for as well. Now, before we get into all of the main storylines for us to unpack, I'm going to hand it to Daniel to give us the race rundown.
Sure. I'll try and make this quick because, as you said, we've got a lot of storylines to get through. So Lando Norris dominated the Mexico City Grand Prix, won by over 30 seconds, then was booed by the fans at the end of the race, which seemed about as unnecessary as the VSC, to be honest. But Charles Leclerc was in second place. He had a bit of a boo-boo at the first corner, which we'll get into as well, because that wasn't controversial at all. Max Verstappen in third place has had a very busy race, and if I mention anything, I forget everything. So we will move on to Oliver Bearman, who finished in fourth position. A phenomenal lap 6. He overtook the reigning quadruple world champion as if he was in an Alpine, which is impressive to say the least. Oscar Piastri in fifth. Missing posters have gone up for Oscar Piastri, but there is hope at the end of the tunnel for him, I think. Kimi Antonelli in sixth, whose sole purpose was to irritate his teammate, who finished seventh. Antonelli finishing ahead of Russell for the first time in his career. Russell very irate over the radio with the team strategy and having McLaren stuck somewhere very uncomfortable for a number of laps. Lewis Hamilton, he got the 8th on Sunday, but not the one he would have been expecting this year, which was unfortunate for him, thanks to that 10-second penalty.
That might be the single best part of the race rundowns we've had this year. That's so good.
Thank you. Just came to me. Double points for Haas, with Esteban Ocon in 9th. Maybe they'll get a double podium soon because Brazil's coming up, so who knows. Speaking of Brazil, we've got Bortoleto in 10th. He made up 6 places, back to the points after qualifying 16th. Very impressive. Yuki Tsunoda had a 12-second pit stop. Red Bull mechanics deciding to give him a 10-second penalty of their own for some reason. He was in the points beforehand, but finished 11th. Alex Albon in 12th. Was very upset with his team about strategy again. Switched to the hard tyre for some reason, which was the worst tyre of all time. Isaac Hadjar in 13th. He blamed his lack of softs for his pointless finish, but maybe a new team will sort that out. But looking at Tsunoda, maybe not. Lance Stroll was 14th. He refused to elaborate on his lap 1 spin. There was just no grip, I think. And Alpine had a dog of a car this weekend. Maybe it was one of their Formula Renault cars that they brought over or something, because it just had horrible deg, and they were the last of the finishers. Then we had Carlos Sainz beefing with a rookie again at the first corner, so we've got like the scoreline something like Sainz 20 and Anwar 19 for this season or something.
A battle for the ages this is, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean that was very typical of Carlos Sainz's season, I'm afraid, and Anwar's as well. Fernando Alonso was the third anonymous DNF of the race, really. He had a braking issue in his front axle, which meant he retired. Nico Hulkenberg was second of the anonymous DNFs. He had a power unit issue since the formation lap, and Liam Lawson had half his car missing, basically, he was explaining, because Carlos Sainz drove into him, in his own words.
Awesome, brilliant race rundown. I want to start, and I think this is, the obvious place where I'm going to start, will be the title battle. Because we've seen a big shift over the course of this weekend, right? I'm going to firstly ask Alex this question, because a lot of people were saying this, about, is this Lando Norris's best weekend in Formula 1? Where do you stand on that statement? Because you can't deny how impressive this weekend was. He felt like he was a cut above everyone over the course of the 3 days.
Yeah, I believe that Lando's qualifying was pretty solid. His race, I think the McLarens were on pace, especially Lando, but Oscar, from 8th he did have a good drive, but then again, like, his qualifying let him down, because I feel like Oscar did actually pretty well in the race from where he started in qualifying, but it's just the qualifying that really let him down, and it's his worst qualifying position, where it was not his fault and he drove into the barriers in Azerbaijan, but yeah, his car's just his qualifying performances are just disappointing considering his car.
So would you say that you would attribute more of the McLaren and the Norris win to the car here, or do you think there was also do you think this was more a Norris being able to wrestle really good performance out of it?
I feel like the pressure's been on Lando and he's delivered. I know I sort of complained in Azerbaijan and Singapore about Norris, not really taking chances, but this is a very positive sign from him. I really do think that he has taken the title back into his own hands. This is really good for him. And I think it's landing time. I don't know. It's kind of the modern equivalent of hammer time. I don't know. He's probably just going to lock in and get like second, first, second, or something like that.
We're going to have to workshop that phrase. I get the impression. I don't particularly like that. Hammer time had a nice ring to it. That did not.
I also love the idea that locking in is getting a lot of second place.
Sorry, I meant to say second, first. That's what I mean. I think he's going to win in Abu Dhabi and Las Vegas. Brazil, I think it might be Verstappen, honestly. And then Qatar, I think it might be Verstappen again. So that's what I'm saying. I think Verstappen and Norris are going to win 2 races each for the end of the season.
Interesting early prediction there. Addy, I want to come to you here. I think you, Alex, did a little bit of a disservice by calling Norris's performance in qualifying decent, because I thought it was exemplary. I think, what was it, 4.5 gap ahead of Leclerc? What is probably nowadays a country mile in the grand scheme of things there. Yeah. How impressive was that performance for in your eyes?
I mean, it's the performance I've been looking from him, in the fact of your teammate, who's you're in a championship fight with, has not had a great start to the weekend. Take advantage of it. And he's done that in some style, really. I mean, it was complete domination all weekend. Even in qualifying, he just looked like he was just a pace ahead of everyone else for the most part. And, you know, it's been the trend for a while recently for the last few Grand Prix of whoever starts in pole position, you know, tends to find themselves just having a pretty comfortable race. And, you know, Norris did exactly just that. And I do actually think that this is probably one of the best drives we've seen from Norris. Just the fact that there was nothing you could have said about him in terms of, like, other than it was just a dominating race. He did no mistakes. Everything went perfectly to plan. He did the job on Saturday, where, you know, it's been mattering a lot more. Yeah, just complete and utter control.
Yeah, Daniel, I've got a couple of questions for you. I guess I think a lot of people think Miami for him in 2024 was a good weekend and a good race for him. How does that stack up compared to that? And my second question is, how important was it for him to capitalise and put not Piastri to the sword here? Because I think a lot of us felt that it was a missed opportunity in Baku when Piastri did have the worst F1 race in his career, I guess, F1 weekend, I'd say. And he didn't really capitalise on that, but he certainly did today. Well, not today, but this weekend.
Yeah, I knew you meant. I think this is Lando Norris' best win of his career. I don't even think Miami's top 3, probably, purely because he did get lucky thanks to the safety car. And he did win from 5th, which was impressive to say the least. But, you know, he didn't quite do that job in qualifying that the car clearly had potential to do in the race when he just drove away from Verstappen. But this time, like you said, 4.5 tenths in qualifying was exemplary. And the important thing this time was the start, which Norris has been criticised for in the past. Hasn't been so much of an Achilles heel this year, but he got a mega launch off the line, which meant that slipstream that we normally see into turn 1 didn't happen as effectively. No car was ahead of him at the apex of turn 1, unless you extrapolate to Verstappen, maybe. It was miles off in the grass. But that was the most impressive thing for me. Obviously the car pace in clean air then revealed itself, which we know the McLaren can at some points, but Norris still did a fantastic job. Second, probably ahead of his win in Zandvoort last year in terms of most dominant and impressive wins. On the second question, it's just kind of beating Piastri when he's down, to be honest. It is definitely a kind of interactionist thing where Piastri's dropped off a little bit of a cliff, but Norris has risen to the top of that cliff and seems to be climbing higher still. There do seem to be some factors that aren't allowing Oscar to extract the maximum from the car, and also small things like track characteristics. He's not so good on the less grippy circuits, which Norris kind of can have a feel for better than Piastri, but Andrea Stella said that Oscar's added some tools to his armoury this weekend, which should 100%, as he put it, allow him to be competitive again in Brazil, which means the championship fight is well and truly on for the remaining rounds of the season, which is exciting.
Exactly. I think the important thing to note is Piastri is still only 1 point behind, right? This is by no means an open and shut case with him. Lucy, my question here is, now Norris is in the lead of the championship. He's never been in this situation before where he is actually sitting at the top, sitting pretty, I guess. Do you, considering his issues in terms of dealing with pressure that we've seen over the course of his career, do you think there is an opportunity for those issues to start creeping in now he's in this position of strength?
I think that if there is, obviously it's only 1 point, so kind of compared to Piastri's lead in the championship, in some ways I'd say it's kind of been a big swing, not necessarily because there's a massive points gap between them now, but if we consider that Piastri still has like a DNF over Norris in terms of Norris has not finished twice this season, and that's only happened to Piastri once. So Norris has closed down like a 25 point gap in addition to any existing gap. I think that firstly it's only 1 point, so kind of he's not sitting pretty at the top of the table. Him being 1 point ahead means that hypothetically, if he and Piastri and Verstappen DNF every single race now, that he would win, but it by no means, it doesn't carry the same sort of weight that having even like a 5 or 6 point lead does. Like no matter what position the McLarens finish, because they will probably finish in the points if they finish. If Piastri's ahead of Norris, then Piastri's going to at least tie, and if not, probably take the lead again. But in terms of the pressure thing, I think I don't think that that's going to be such a big deal, or if so, it'll be impacting them both equally, because if Piastri's slight struggles in form maybe have been to do with the fact that he's quite new to the experience of being a championship leader. I mean, he's been leading it since Saudi, but new this season. Whereas for Norris, that's is also kind of in a similar situation. Then it will come down then to kind of just performance, and possibly them both being under equal pressure, fighting for a first world championship. I don't think it'll play a massive role in the way that sometimes people like to hype it up that it will.
Yeah, I think, as you raise a good point, ultimately it's very easy to get carried away with this championship lead thing, but the extent of it is 1 point, right? Regardless of what happens, any type of, if Piastri finishes in front of him, that's already got that 1 point gone, right? I want to move the conversation onto Piastri because he's obviously come off a bad weekend. I think we are under no illusion of that across the five of us. Alex, I want to ask you a question here because Daniel said something and that kind of interested me. The fact that he saw a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel in some way because of the end of that race. You said that he had a decent race, all things considering his start position. How do you assess this weekend? Was it were you okay with how he performed in the race here, or do you think that he still should have made more progress over the course of the Sunday?
I mean, of course, there are things for Oscar to improve. Like, if you really, really, really had the lion's desire to fight for the championship, he would have overtaken Bearman for P4 before the VSC, and yeah, because if you are in a McLaren and you got someone in front who's in a Haas, you gotta be closing in 5/10 or something like that. Get inside DRS, just get it swiftly, get it done. And I mean, of course, P4 and P5 isn't really a massive point difference, but in this championship race, every point counts. And so, yeah, we'll talk about the VSC later, but I do think that it could have denied Verstappen a second and Piastri a fourth, but we'll see. There could be an alternate universe where the VSC never happens, but still Leclerc and Bearman managed to keep their positions, but I'll leave that to someone else.
Yeah, I agree that there's kind of an equal possibility that without the VSC that it still ends in the same way, but like I say, we're not talking about that. I think though it kind of does sort of do a disservice to the whole kind of concept of a championship battle to kind of just say, well, if you were really a championship fighter, you would have made every overtake you tried, or you would have just kind of done better. Because I think as well, there is something probably quite demoralising about having a bad, obviously I'm not in the car, but about having a bad weekend and just kind of your teammates leading by 30 seconds and you're stuck in fighting for P4 having started from P8, and you're probably a bit done by now, even if you know that every point counts.
Addy, what do you have to say about this? Because I'm surprised that Alex has said that about he should have overtaken Bearman if he had the lion's desire for a championship. Where do you stand on that?
I think that's quite harsh to say, in terms of, saying that he should have overtaken Bearman, because Bearman himself was quite good, and we'll touch on his own performance because he really stepped up this weekend. So I think it's unfair just to label it as a unspirited drive in terms of not being able to get the overtake done on Bearman. Again, I just have this feeling that just something's nagging at him, whatever it may be, whether it be he's taken a hit in confidence, which I don't blame him for, because it hasn't gone that great for him the last few races, or if it's just something with he's not getting used to the tracks, because last season he also had a similar sort of performance record where he wasn't doing that great this part of the season. But no, he's still in it, and ultimately, if he didn't make the move on Bearman, he's still gotten himself a decent amount of points, more than his starting position would have determined. He's just got to make sure he's at least fighting for a decent chunk of points for every single race, and he'll still find himself in contention, so long as he doesn't let Norris get too far away from him.
Daniel, do you think, and I guess this is following up onto kind of the points Addy made, do you think that the fact that he made some of those overtakes at the end, because he made a really good overtake on, what was it, Russell, Antonelli?
George Russell.
It was a very good overtake, right? It was exactly kind of what we wanted to see out of a person who's fighting for a championship. Does that type of manoeuvre and that type of recovery, I guess, it was kind of a cosmetic comeback in some sense, because he was always going to lose points to Norris. But do you think that gives you quite a bit of hope going forward? That he potentially is, it might just be just a couple bad races here, particularly bad races, but he should be able to recover going from Brazil onwards.
Yeah, like I said, I do have hope for Piastri going forward. I wouldn't say the Russell move gave me any more hope for him. I think we already know that Piastri has that in his arsenal. He's done it so many times. He did it twice on Hamilton in Saudi and Australia, were crazy moves around the outside of dirty parts of the track, which were great to see his commitment. So those were spirited overtakes. The Russell overtake was a spirited move. And so I think it was just slightly unlucky timing that he didn't get up to Bearman. Of course, it might not have gone that way, because if you remember, there was a point in the race where Antonelli pitted and Piastri followed him in, and had those pit stops gone equally well, Piastri would have come out behind Antonelli still, which could have entirely compromised his race, and he might not have been anywhere near Bearman. He might not have managed to get Russell, because he would have been stuck behind Antonelli, but Antonelli went long in his marks in the pit box, which allowed Piastri's crew to get a faster stop than Mercedes, which got him out ahead. So I think he was even slightly lucky from that perspective. It wasn't just a great drive. There was a bit of luck in getting back to where he did finish in the end. But overall, I think we've got a Piastri who has had a few setbacks, but I think he's still got it in him to properly take the fight and get back to competitiveness. It's a mountain to climb. The deficit to Norris in qualifying was something like 0.6, but if they have learned things like they said they have, then they can apply them no problem.
I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in Brazil, because we've got a sprint race there, if I'm not mistaken, right? So that's two different opportunities to actually see them race wheel to wheel, I guess. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. Let's move on to the discussion of the third kind of contender of the championship. I'm going to ask you the difficult question here, Alex. Does the fact that he finished third, because we've mentioned before that Verstappen needed pretty much perfection over the course of the next few to overcome that deficit, how much is he still in the race?
I feel like Verstappen closed the gap to Piastri to 35, which is fairly good. So mathematically, it's still a fairly even shot. Like, in terms of the World Championship, he's on about a third of chance of winning, to be honest. But in terms of the actual shift in the championship, I do think Lando's going to get a boost from this, and the fact that he's won comfortably over Max, especially in this race, with the form that Max has been having lately, suggests that perhaps maybe Max doesn't have enough races remaining. And I would say that it's going to be quite close. And I mean, the question on, where the order's going to be, I think if he does want to, take the championship for himself, whoever is in front in terms of the McLarens, if Piastri has a good run or if Norris has a good run, Verstappen has to overtake the other guy. So he has to overtake second place after the Vegas race ends. He has to be in second place in the championship for him to stand a chance of winning the driver's title. Because if he doesn't, then he doesn't have enough races remaining. That's simple as.
Oh, Addy, I don't think you fully agree there.
I mean, I think there's still a decent amount of points available for Verstappen to get, really, and I think it's helped a lot that it's Norris that finished first and not Piastri. I think if Piastri finished first, then I think Verstappen sort of got to, reevaluate, his ability to try and catch up to the points effort. But because it was Norris, the person who started the weekend in second, who Verstappen wasn't that far behind anyway, and Verstappen, it's not like Verstappen finished fifth or whatever, he finished third, which is still a very decent chunk of points to get, considering especially where he started in the race. But no, he's still pretty good touching distance. All it takes is just one result. Daniel mentioned about Oscar Piastri having some luck here and there with a strategy. All it takes is a bit of luck for either of the three drivers at any of the next few races, and the whole perspective of the championship just completely opens up. So, if Norris or Piastri, don't have a good race or, DNF, and Verstappen's there to capitalise the points, already Verstappen's closed down the gap. So, I get the perspective of does he have enough races to catch up the deficit, but he's still within the range that if anything were to happen, he's in line to take the opportunity by the scruff of its neck and make full advantage of it, and then it's anyone's game.
And I think the important thing to mention is, although Verstappen didn't win or finish second, I don't think that was down to him by any stretch. I think that Red Bull car just wasn't that competitive this weekend relative to what we were seeing over the course of the last few, and I think you can see that by, Yuki Tsunoda's performances as well. That seems to be a good litmus test in terms of where that Red Bull really sits. I guess, do you think because I think Red Bull have been on a good streak in terms of the car over the last few, right? Do you think the fact that they weren't very competitive this time around does dampen your hopes a bit more as well?
It would certainly raise question marks. I think, as you said, sort of the capacity of how much does that Red Bull car actually have to offer? Because I do believe Max has been overachieving in that Red Bull car.
Oh, 100%. That's undeniable.
Whereas I do also think that Tsunoda and Lawson, when he was there, I think they were severely underperforming in that car, because I don't think the car is that bad where you're not making out of Q1 or whatever. So somewhere in the middle is where that Red Bull car's actual performance is, out of the hands of anyone that's not Max Verstappen. But it does raise some question marks in terms of how much that Red Bull car actually has left to give. I think we've all pretty much accepted that Max Verstappen's been overachieving in that car, whereas his teammates, both Tsunoda and Lawson, when he was there, have been severely underperforming in that car. So I think the performance is somewhere in the middle. Whether Max is able to extrapolate enough of it to continue on with the championship fight, that really just depends on how the car wants to be on any given day. Because there's been some times where we think, the car might actually be quite good, and it's potentially not been so good. But to be fair, same with the McLarens as well. It's also been a case of sometimes we think, this is a track where things would go well for them, and then maybe it hasn't gone well for them for whatever reason. So I think Max would definitely be fighting the upper limits of what that Red Bull actually has to give. It's just a question of, at any given point, what actually is that limit relative to what the McLarens have to offer. Yeah,
very good point. I think, again, we'll see. I think also the other thing is it's going to be very track dependent as well. It might actually be the case of this Mexico Grand Prix was not suited to that Red Bull. I guess looking forward in terms of the grid, because I think Verstappen, we all are saying he is still in this. I know I haven't asked you, Daniel. Do you still think he's in this comfortably?
I don't think it's comfortable anymore.
Oh, interesting. Talk to me.
Well, simply because he has to make up just under 10 points on the championship leader per weekend, and he wasn't anywhere close to that this weekend, so I just think it's a tall order.
So if I asked you to put a percentage number on it, what would you say?
There's about, for me, a 28% chance.
That's very specific. I like the fact that you got what stops it from being 25 and instead the 28?
Because 25 is too low. No, I don't know. It just felt like the right number. I think, it's Max, so you can't count him out. Therefore, he always has at least a 25% chance.
Yeah.
By virtue. But on top of that, I'm not sure how much more he can do. This weekend, it just didn't feel like the Red Bull was in the window. And if they have one more weekend like that, it's surely over.
That's a very good point. I think, Addy, what are you going to say? Because it does. He's right. It is a very short runway now going to the line here. So it is all it takes is one very bad weekend for Red Bull, which we have seen quite a lot over the course of this season, right?
Yeah. What I will say though is Saturday is going to be quite important, both the qualifying sessions, because we've seen a little bit of a pattern where whoever qualifies first has such a big theoretical advantage. I think Saturday is just going to be extremely important. I think Red Bull's performance is very much going to be dependent on how well they do at qualifying and how well they can then hold off the position if they do get a pole position, or at least qualify within like the top 4 of the grid. But yeah, I think Saturday now more than ever has just become extremely important.
Yeah, and I guess we can have arguments about whether that's a good thing for the sport or not at a later date. But it's an absolutely valid point to bring
I
up.
don't make the rules.
Yeah, none of us do, as much as I would wish. The sport would be a great place if it was me in charge. But we'll move on to the driving. Kind of finished ahead of Verstappen, and I thought really had a good weekend, and that was Charles Leclerc in a Ferrari that did look competitive on that Saturday, and I felt was pretty competitive on the Sunday too. Charles Leclerc, I thought he popped up in Q3 with an unbelievable lap that even I think Norris was surprised about, right? And he was like, oh damn, what's going on here? But it was overall a very good performance for a Ferrari team that we haven't really seen a lot of nice things from. Lucy, how surprising was it? Because a lot of us did predict, or I didn't. So you guys all predicted Ferrari to be up there.
I'm not surprised that Ferrari did well. I think they did well last year, and while they seem to have forgotten everything that made their car good last year, it is still kind of a devolution of last year's car. So I'm kind of not surprised that they were fairly competitive here. Leclerc acted with questionable legality, but there was no question that he was quite good at driving this weekend. And I think that really, were it not for the fact that kind of tyre delta came into it in the last bit, which allowed Verstappen to close the gap so much, I think that was the only time where I ever sort of doubted that he might end up in P2, and even that, clearly he did end up in P2. Pretty good, pretty solid.
And I don't think I heard the words lift and coast a lot, as much as I normally would, right? Lift and coast, Leica didn't play a big role.
They snuck it in there.
Did they?
Snuck it in there somewhere.
Well,
surely they would have.
I feel like it's a common thing.
I feel like if they didn't sneak it in there, they would have been disqualified.
Yeah, it's like almost.
We would have realised by then if they were lifting and coasting or not.
But I think the point I'm making here is they've always seemed to be struck by troubles. Leclerc it felt like he had a troubleless weekend, right?
I just thought of something. It might be completely wrong, but do you think maybe Verstappen was able to lunge on Hamilton on that move on lap 6 because he was already in the LICO process, and so he was lifting quite early for the corner, so his entry speed wasn't as high, which would have allowed Verstappen to go in hotter? It's just a thought, but I think it's possible.
I saw you cooking that up in your head, right?
Yeah.
Even with Ferrari, though, who lifts and coasts by lap 6?
Oh, Ferrari lifting coasts by lap 6.
Any team you can expect to do it, I can guarantee it's going to be Ferrari. But I thought, genuinely, he didn't really put a foot wrong here, did he, Daniel?
Leclerc?
Yeah.
No, not at all. Well, wrong in the moral sense, probably yes.
Yeah, okay.
In turn 1, of course. But in a driving sense, not at all. In competitiveness, he was just flawless. I don't know what caused Ferrari to be so competitive, to be honest. I think it was just loads of little factors that kind of played to their advantage in this race. Nothing overwhelming. Maybe the low grip would have helped them. Degradation, there was degradation, but it wasn't too bad. I'm not expecting this performance at all in any of the remaining races, because that's just Ferrari, and Mercedes are similar. But I guess there's no point in me speculating.
Yeah, I mean, we just take it and enjoy it. It's one of those ones where you just know that if you expect this going forward, it will kill your heart. But you know what? You just got to enjoy it whilst you're there. Alex, my question to you is, because Hamilton also seemed pretty happy about this car as well. He was a lot more upbeat in the post-quali conference, at least, and then he proceeded to have an incredibly messy Sunday, at least from my perspective. Were you surprised at how different those races went between Leclerc and Hamilton?
I mean, I really do think that both Hamilton and Verstappen should have gotten a penalty for pretty fair judgment, with the fact that Verstappen did actually cut across Hamilton twice. And the fact is that perhaps at least one of the two could have gone through as the penalty, because, of course, like, if the FIA were quite strict on both of them, Hamilton would have gotten a 10 and Verstappen would have gotten a 20. Perhaps even Leclerc would have gotten like a 5 or something like that for his sneaky beginning move, but then he did give his position back, so I found it like really, really harsh. But then again, Hamilton's been in the sport for like a long time, and I kind of like grimaced a bit when I saw that Hamilton didn't take the slip road, because I feel like he did that because, like, first of all, Verstappen's just off the track all the time. Second of all, his teammate did it and didn't get punished. So it's sort of like, you know, like a naughty kid where, like, if you do, like, if there's like a group of children playing outside and like one of them does like a naughty thing, then the others will follow him, and one of them always gets punished, and it's never the one who starts it. So I feel like that's maybe the case.
I think there's a disagreement here again. Addy, I want you to state your case. Where do you stand on it?
This is just a personal opinion. I don't blame Lewis for taking the line he did and not taking the slip road, because that slip road is tiny, and the way that slip road enters the rest of the track is arguably more dangerous than what Hamilton did, because it is literally a T-junction, which, why would you have a T-junction in a racetrack? That never ends well. In terms of Hamilton's weekend as a whole, I just think he got incredibly unlucky with how things panned out, because he had the pace. And he actually had a pretty good race start. It's just unfortunate that he got on the receiving end of an FIA decision, which is pretty debatable, whereas the person he was racing on track with didn't, which is also pretty debatable. It was just unfortunate, because especially after that qualifying performance we saw where he looked quite good and he was approaching the race weekend in a very good, very positive mood, and the Ferrari upgrades that they did with the cooling, whatever they did, whatever developments they've been doing in the last few races, it's clearly been working. But yeah, I just think you're just incredibly unlucky this weekend.
Yeah, I agree to a certain extent. I think there was some bad luck involved from the perspective of, yes, he saw his teammate cutting over the grass at the first corner, which gave Leclerc the position, and he didn't have to give it back, so Hamilton just thought, okay, that's the state of play, I'm going to do a similar thing to Verstappen. Obviously, I think that penalty was deserved. I think Verstappen won the corner at turn 1 in the eyes of the stewards, which meant that he was defending going into turn 4. So Hamilton was the attacking car, and that did not allow him to stay ahead when he went off. I agree the slip road is ridiculous, and frankly, I don't know how they expect anyone to go down there, especially at the rate of knots that Hamilton was arriving as well. It was a big lock-up. He was still carrying a lot of entry speed. But also in Hamilton's race, it wasn't perfect from his side either. He had a very messy in-lap. He lost a lot of time, especially to Piastri, which allowed Piastri to get past in that sequence when he boxed. I think it was the next lap. So we never saw Piastri overtake Hamilton on track. That was the reason. Hamilton's in-lap was pretty shocking. He had a lock-up and lost a lot of time. But having said that, his qualifying pace was much improved on previous weekends, and the Ferrari in general, which is positive momentum for both.
And it wasn't just the Ferrari main team that had success, because there was a Haas who finished in 4th, and I think it's his highest finish in the sport, obviously. And talking about Oliver Bearman, who finished in P4 and navigated the pressure from 2 Mercedes, McLaren, who was also in that battle as well. How surprising was it to see Bearman up there so high on a weekend where, although the 2 Haas's did end up finishing in the points, he was so much further ahead than where Esteban Ocon, his teammate, was?
I mean, firstly, I think not only is it Bearman's best result, but I also think it's worth echoing that it's like Haas's joint best result. It's from when Romain Grosjean finished 4th in like 2017. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. I will find out that information for you for the preview for next time. But no, to be honest, I think that Bearman did get a very good start. I mean, I assume he got a very good start. They didn't show us the telemetry data till like 3 laps in, and then he was just in 3rd. So, no, not in 3rd, in 4th. So I just kind of assumed he got quite a good start. And then from there, kind of never looked back. I think, you know, he was, I mean, all the drivers were getting altitude sickness because it's so high up, but he was probably even more than everyone else. But thank you. I can see that Daniel's slightly chuckling. I'm trying to bring a slightly comedic tone to the podcast.
That amused me. That was a good
yeah,
one.
thank you. But yeah, no, I think that it was very impressive from him. Just a very measured performance. I mean, for a long time it looked like he was about to get a podium until Verstappen suddenly picked up the pace on like the end of the second stint and the final stint. And also Bearman did pit again, which dropped him behind Verstappen. Although I think given the way that given the way Verstappen closed on Leclerc, Bearman probably wouldn't have gotten a podium anyway. But this, I think, is just a good track for people whose surnames begin with B, because this is also, I was going to include it in the preview, but I couldn't find a good way to segue it in. This is actually where Benetton took their first ever win, and also where Gerhard Berger took his first ever win. There you go, in 1986. History facts.
It's again, never an Warwick F1 show without a historical fact. I guess, Alex, do you agree with the sentiment that if Bearman wasn't to pit, he still would have finished fourth?
I think Bearman had a really, really good drive, considering that Haas is one of the weaker teams of this season. I mean,
they were competitive with both cars this weekend.
It's a rare showing from Haas, and I'm really happy for them because, of course, this team hasn't really got loads of success, especially with the fact that they still don't have a podium, and it would have been so exciting to see, just like the fact that Hulkenberg got the podium in Silverstone. It would have been amazing to see Haas get a podium, but alas, Max is Max. Even in the worst car, Max will still overtake Ollie, so yeah. Though the fact that Ollie did overtake Max for a certain while during the hustle and bustle was quite impressive, so I would give it to him. He did deserve driver of the day by a mile.
By a mile. That moment, by the way, was judged to perfection by Bearman, because yes, Verstappen went off the road at turn 4 while trying to defend from Hamilton. I'm convinced he was trying to force him off as well and make him cut the grass and not give the position back to give him a penalty, because that's Verstappen's rationale, but that's not the point. Bearman, he had the inside on Max Verstappen, and he was in the yellow flag zone at the time because Hamilton was crossing the grass, and Bearman actually lifted off while he was racing Verstappen, so he didn't overtake him during the yellow flag zone, which I think is incredible racing IQ in that moment for a rookie to realise that he would be getting a penalty and the overtake would be illegal if he executed the move, and to have the awareness to lift off in that moment. I think it was just really impressive.
I think it was a very impressive weekend. Also, I think I wanted to pick up on what Lucy said about it was a measured performance, and it's from a driver who has had his fair share of incidents over the course of the season, right? It feels like really good progression as a driver, right, Daniel?
Yeah, 100%. He's still on 10 penalty points, but that will change very soon, I believe.
I think some of them are expiring over the next couple.
Yeah.
Yes, because he picked up a couple in Brazil last year during the rain on Colapinto. But yeah, Bearman, it has felt like he just kind of needed to string a weekend together because he did have the pace. He's kind of like Carlos Sainz. He's got into a few messes that were of his own making, but he didn't really need to do it. And this weekend he just put it all together. Haas put it all together as well. Their 2.3 second stop, I think, was unbelievable. One of the best they've done, if not the best, this season. So it's vaulted them from 9th to 8th in the Constructors, which is big for them. Might not sound like much to us, but it's well deserved for Haas, I think.
I think these I think it's one of those midfield teams that likes to pop up with a surprise here and there. And this weekend was no exception because it was both Haas's that made it into the points. Esteban Ocon also got points, had he, right? I guess we always do a bit where we discuss who do we think to be at the top of the midfield, and I guess our assessment here would definitely be the Haas's, right?
Yeah, I especially based off just what's happened this season. Yeah, definitely in terms of pure results, probably. I felt the most convinced by Haas and what they've done this season than anyone else on the grid.
Really, over Williams. I get the argument for this race, but over the season?
I think the problem I have with Williams is that it always feels like...
Careful.
It always feels like for them, what ends up happening is they'll have one driver that does really well, whereas the other driver, at least for the most part this season, has just sort of been floundering. Whereas with Haas, it's a bit unfortunate of like a Haas a lot of the time has been both drivers have been like like lounging down at the bottom. But my issue with Haas was always today. I just felt they got unlucky a bunch of points this season. I always thought that at any given point, I always felt most confident with the Haas in terms of getting a result. It's just a matter of did luck play their way, and this Grand Prix, luck played their way in a big way. But I also think it was good credit with them with their strategy when they decided to do what they did. Good
And
execution
pace.
and their pace as well. Pace itself was good as well, and Bearman clearly showed that, and Ocon as well. So overall, just in terms of a good weekend, can't really ask for much more.
Just quickly, Addy, I need to congratulate you. You're being modest, of course. In our preview episode, you were the only one of us to say that Haas would be the head of the midfield battle. Lucy said RB, which didn't work out very well at all.
I will say, though, at least I didn't say Williams. That would have turned out worse.
Yes, it did turn out worse for myself and Alex, who said Williams, but Addy was correct, so you've won that little mini game of predictions.
I fear that may be the only prediction I get right.
We will get onto that in a moment's time. I wanted to give us a little bit of time, though, to discuss for about a few minutes some of the stewarding decisions that we have referred to over the course of this episode, because I get the impression quite a lot of the people I'm around are very aggrieved by some of the decision making the stewards did. I'll let Lucy start because I get the impression she's going to go into a bit of a rant.
I won't rant because I will give everyone a chance to say their opinion.
Good.
How kind of you.
It's a collective.
How generous.
It's a group rant, not just me. To be honest, I will admit that in the past couple of races, I've thought that the FIA have done a kind of all right job, and I thought that maybe they'd turned a corner from being completely awful to sort of okay. Boy, was I wrong. No, so I think there are two things here. Firstly is the stewarding decisions. We've already touched a little on it with Hamilton's penalty, and I don't think it's necessarily Hamilton getting a penalty. I think in many ways that is in line with what the stewarding decisions would be. Although I think combining it with some sort of investigation for not rejoining the slip road is a bit ridiculous. It should more be kind of for going off the track while trying to like maintain a position and things like that. I think that's a little ridiculous. Especially, I think, given the fact that Leclerc didn't get one. I think it's very understandable why Hamilton was so aggrieved because his teammate did a very similar thing and didn't get penalised. And I also think that while in some ways I'm glad that it does encourage sort of an exciting start to the race that the FIA don't tend to prosecute, for lack of a better word, first lap 1, turn 1 incidents. I think that at least in the past couple of races, it is setting a fairly dangerous precedent where drivers just kind of try and bin it into turn 1, knowing that either knowing that they kind of don't have to worry about locking up because either, they'll DNF, in which case, or they'll make an overtake and they won't get penalised for it even if they go off the track. And I think that is a big problem because I think we want to see excitement, but we also want to see people following the rules. And then the second bit is mainly on their safety cars because Jesus Christ, on a bike, because this is a no swearing podcast, so that has actually significantly cut down this rant's runtime that I'm not allowed to swear. But no, I think firstly there are two decisions. Firstly, obviously, if there had been anything about the safety of Carlos Sainz or his car, of course, call out the VSC. However, from the footage, he'd basically nearly parked it into the exit road. Obviously, the marshals would still have had to come out and secure it, but he was basically off the track, and we were like one lap from the end. So you didn't really need to... If you only need to do a VSC for like 35 seconds, or I can't remember how long it was, it didn't feel that long, then I don't think you particularly need to do one if it's at the end of the race. But that's far less egregious than earlier on, where Lawson had to pit because of all of his damage. We've talked about that, about how Lawson was basically just in and out of the pits until he retired. And then he came back out on track. But by that point, the FIA had already sanctioned the marshals to go and pick debris off the track, while Lawson was also there in an F1 car coming at 100 miles per hour. And I'm sorry, that's just insane how that didn't even get a double waved yellows, and yet Carlos Sainz got a virtual safety car.
And I think, before we were recording that you'd mentioned, Anwar, I think, or maybe it was someone else, can't remember exactly, that maybe they were trying to compensate for the former by being so cautious with the latter. But it's just ridiculous. Like, I don't understand why they get so mad that nobody takes them seriously when they show such egregious levels of incompetence.
It was I think my point there was going to be like trying to play devil's advocate, but you're absolutely right. It just doesn't make sense. Alex, how about what I'm going to let you get on your soapbox here. What's your opinion on the FIA this weekend?
Honestly, I feel like they should have been a bit fair with the penalties. Like, you know, if like 3 drivers do the same thing or similar things, then either all of them get punished or none of them get punished. And I feel like it really did take away from the fact that Hamilton would have gotten his first, and it could be only podium, because he's had such a great streak in Formula 1, yet now not only is his race winning streak over from 2022, but also his podium winning streak might be over this season, and that's really a shame, because yeah, Hamilton's been a great driver over the course of his career, one of the best we ever had, but yeah, it's just such a shame that, I mean, I didn't want to say this because it hurts, but I feel like drivers come to Ferrari and just go down. I don't want Ferrari to be a retirement team, that's the thing.
Interesting. Ali, I want you to respond here. I mean, he made a point about Ferrari being like the Manchester United of F1, which, you know what, I can get on board with. But I guess if you were the FIA, what would you have done instead?
There's a few things that I just sort of have an issue with, which isn't necessarily just specifically to Mexico. It's more of issues we have in Formula 1 as a whole in terms of racing, particularly with dive bombing. I know Verstappen theoretically was ahead in that incident. However, he has literally barged Lewis out of the way, pushed Lewis off track a bit, out of the on track, and then he himself has cut a massive section of the track to like stay ahead of Lewis. Well, at least put himself in a fight with Lewis before the corner where Lewis eventually gets his penalty from. I just don't like the idea of just because you were ahead at an apex means it's your corner, because you look at where Verstappen's coming from. Lewis is already turning into the corner. He is already He's already started turning in. And Verstappen has just sort of come out of nowhere from Lewis's perspective and just pushed him off. How the FIA can't even consider that, let alone giving Lewis a penalty for not taking the escape route and gaining advantage by going off track, which is harsh but fair. I do agree that it is something that justifies getting a penalty. It's one of those where sometimes they're given, sometimes they're not. It just happened to be that this time it was given, which is unfortunate for Lewis. But how Max isn't getting investigated for his antics is debatable. And then with the VSC, I just think the VSC at the end of the race sort of just killed it for me, which is why I gave the race at the start a 7, because that final few laps of the race was looking to be so promising, and then the VSC, a really debatable VSC, why is there a VSC there? If we're being really honest here, why? If I'm the FIA and I've done that, and I look back at it, it's like, why did we do that? Why did we just put a VSC there? Carlos Sainz is nowhere near anything after he's parked the car there,
It
just killed the whole vibe of the race at the end.
It'd curtail what would have been a very nice nail-biting finish. I'm going to give you the difficult question here, Daniel. How much of this was do you think, would you attribute to the rules of Formula 1 in terms of being ahead at the apex? We've talked about how far Scott is at length between the two of us and Lucy as well. But how much is it to do with the actual people in the stewarding office?
Oh, you're right. That is a tough question, Anwar.
That's why I like to ask tough questions.
Obviously, we can't judge the people in the stewarding office on a consistent basis because there aren't consistent people in the stewarding office. The stewards are volunteers who rotate on the calendar. They aren't set people for every single race weekend. So obviously that can play a role in the inconsistency. But I do think the guidelines that the FIA recently published are just a bit bad. There's racing with what these guidelines say, which definitely allow exploitation, which Max Verstappen has shown time and again. And then you have good, ethical racing, which I think Ali was alluding to, which is what we want to see, and what Verstappen didn't necessarily partake in at turn 1 on that move on Hamilton. And they're just not very congruent things. So yes, Verstappen to the letter of the law didn't deserve a penalty for the move at turn 1. He kind of did in the eyes of all of the fans who are watching, because, you know, the casual fan has not read the driver's standards guidelines, right? So they don't understand that because Max got to the apex first, it was his corner and he could bully Lewis out the way if he wanted to. So I understand the confusion and not the hate, but kind of hate towards the FIA for
I think at this stage it probably is hate, right?
It's definitely approaching. It's been approaching it for a while. F175, the boos that came out for FIA compared to the cheers for Pirelli told you everything you needed to know, really, when the tyre supply is getting more airtime. I think on the VSC thing, I'm a little more neutral on it. I think there is footage of Carlos Sainz's car stopped by the marshal post, and it is smoking a bit. So I can understand how they think we can't just leave that car there because it's so close to the end of the race. We've seen it before. Sometimes they just leave the car on track if it's in a safe place, just to kind of run the course of the race, which I think is necessary and probably would have been done if the car hadn't started smoking a little bit. So maybe you did need a couple marshals to get called out to deal with that. But at the same time, no one's going off at that part of the track. Carlos Sainz only went off and then crabbed over to the marshal opening anyway. So no one's actually going to be having a collision at that part of the racetrack. So I don't know. I'm a little bit more neutral on the VSC decision in terms of the penalties. Yeah, who knows what they were thinking. Turn 1 leniency, perhaps you could put the Leclerc thing down to. Hamilton obviously didn't get that grace, and that's the steward's rationale, I guess.
So what we've concluded, you can do whatever the heck you want as long as it's lap 1, turn 1.
It does feel like that. I do think they give so much grace for lap 1, turn 1, in spite of the fact you do have like egregious like breaking of the rules there.
I think as well, this is kind of all very hypothetical, and it probably won't end up being a big deal, because as kind of we mentioned earlier, just because there was a lap, like a lap and a half, I think, something like that. Because I can't really tell, because I think it was a lap, but it was a lap for Norris, which is like a lap and a half for everyone else. But anyway,
it was that far
anyway, God, I was trying to do maths in my head this whole race, and it was not good for my fresh as flu addled brain. But I think it's such a close championship. Verstappen is still mathematically in it. Piastri is obviously still mathematically in it, and yet those are the people who kind of were disadvantaged by the VSC. This is by no means, I'm not one of those insane people who are like, whenever something doesn't go the way of a certain driver, that I'm like, this is clearly biased. This is just bad luck that those happen to be the drivers that were impacted, just in the same way that it was good luck for Leclerc and Bearman. But if it comes down to the end of the season and either of those drivers lose the championship by, or even for Verstappen, if Red Bull lose the constructors by that sort of margin, especially since they're fighting with Ferrari, then this could be quite a big talking point as to it, or it will be something that people will fixate on as a hypothetical that could have gone a different way. And I think that in a way that's kind of another concern that's kind of got nothing to do with the rules, but it's like, oh, so close to the end of the season, it could be something that people look back on and put under probably even more scrutiny.
What we don't want is a repeat of Michael Massey 2021, right? I think that
we won't get that.
Well, we won't get that, but
hopefully.
Michael Massey's been fired, so we physically cannot get a repeat
not with the
of
same
that.
person, but the idea.
Yeah, you can kill
Kill the person, not the idea.
But I think I am slightly concerned about some of the decisions they made. To be fair, to them their credit, I don't think they've been that bad over the last few races prior to Mexico. But we'll see how that plays out. I think it's.
Why does it always feel like it's either the FIA or the TV direction coming under fire these days in Formula 1? Like every
they
race,
never seem to get it right. At
the
the same
TV
time.
direction.
It's improved very well though over the last few years. It's a lot better.
Yeah. I have some slight questions about the things that they chose to put in the big screen versus the small screen this weekend, but they did at least put the interesting stuff in the small screen.
It was all broadcast. It was just a question of sometimes they were broadcasting the wrong thing, but I had no complaints from my end there. I think it's time to move on to our predictions, though. Actually, no, I want to say a disclaimer, and this is a message to anyone who thinks that Piastri is being handicapped or sabotaged.
Do you want me to say this as the
No.
president Piastri fan?
No, I want to deliver this because I think you are ridiculous. If there was any case of sabotage, we would have heard about this a long time ago because we've got a manager in Mark Webber who would have pointed that out very quickly on. So let's be very clear, there is no sabotage going on. Piastri is simply underperforming at this current stage. But let's not start going delusional and lunatic about everything because quite simply, there's no sabotage. Addy, you want to add
I just want to add, there's nothing wrong with underperforming.
Yes.
There doesn't have to be a reason for underperforming. There doesn't have to be a direct reason because of, this team did this or whatever. It could literally just be, you just have a bad run of form. And it happens as a driver. It happens to anyone. It just happens to be that for Oscar it's happening at the worst possible time that it could happen. But ultimately, you can't just say, how convenient that like his dip of form is happening. Clearly, McLaren want Norris to win. You can't use that argument because if the McLaren wanted Norris to win, they would have Norris win a long time ago. They would just put all their efforts on Norris. So it's a baseless argument.
It's just silly, isn't it?
I also think there's nothing wrong with having an underperformance, and if Piastri does go on to win this season, if the same way if Norris goes on to win, don't point to any times that he's underperformed and said he's not worthy of being a world champion. No, but you just don't do that. If Piastri goes on to win, don't point to these runs of races and say, but he doesn't deserve it. Look at how badly he did it this time. Just don't be a horrible person.
It just does it a lot to discredit work early on. It discredits the person who has performed, and it's discrediting that kind of competitive integrity as well. So let's put an end to that, please, and thank you. It's time to move on to our predictions, which I promise will be a lot more enjoyable and a lot more happier because we're all going to be making fun of each other. So, who wants to kick us off with their predictions? Because I think we had some good ones and some less good ones here.
I can kick us
Lucy,
off.
kick us off.
I did cross a lot of things out of my notebook, so I may have to double check with Anwar that I'm reading out my things.
Don't worry, I've got the notebook.
I said that Norris was going to be on pole, so that is a sweet 3 points for me, which I will take, because even though there is nothing wrong with underperforming, I have been underperforming a little too much for my liking. I said Leclerc was going to win. He didn't, but he did come second, so I think that's still a point.
Yes.
I'm just checking that what I've written down here is the same thing I said last time.
That's all good.
I said Verstappen P2. Again, he didn't get P2 for reasons we've talked about earlier. But also, that's still a point because he finished P3. I said Hamilton P3. He was in P3 for a bit of the race and then wasn't, so no points for that. Russell P4, that doesn't get anything because he was in P7. And I said Hadjar P5, we're not going to talk about that. I was thinking maybe I'll put Haas, and then I was like, no, there's no way Haas will have a good weekend.
They did. Awesome. Alex,
so you're welcome, Haas fans, basically.
The anti-jinx. Alex, why don't you reveal do you remember your predictions? Because I've got them on me if you want me to read them out for you.
Yeah, I remember.
Awesome.
I didn't really do that well, but I got Leclerc's position right.
Okay, so can we get your pole and top 5?
Pole, Verstappen? No.
Nope, did not happen.
First place, Verstappen. Once again, I was attributing win to pole. If we got pole, we would have won, but no. I mean, Verstappen kind of underperformed in the qualifying.
I don't think we can consider Verstappen as an underperformance. I think it was just the car that was not as good.
Yeah,
but
the car
it was relative to what he was doing before. Then sure, it's probably not as high up as you would have hoped.
Yeah, that's why I was like kind of like questioning that. But
I mean, pole to win is a pretty standard thing nowadays.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad prediction by any sense.
First place Verstappen, so I didn't get any points on that. Second place Leclerc, correct.
3 points there.
Nice.
Third place Hamilton. Loads of people predicted Hamilton there, but yeah, should have gotten third place. Fourth place Russell. He got overtaken by Piastri, so yeah.
On a weekend where Merc weren't very competitive either.
I think the Mercedes have just slipped down a bit, but that may be because of the track. Like, the tracks don't suit Mercedes.
Mm.
Norris P5. This is my worst prediction by far. Norris P5. Yeah.
did not happen, and said he won at a canter.
Yeah.
Daniel, how about you?
Yeah, my shame knows no bounds for this one. The points are few and far between. Pole position, Max Verstappen, no. P1, Max Verstappen, no. P2, Charles Leclerc, yes.
Big 3.
Big 3 points. P3, Lewis Hamilton again. So 3 in a row people who predicted him P3. I did not get it there, but we were clearly on something. Or maybe on something. P4 was Lando Norris, but it wasn't because he won the race. And P5, George Russell, so no, just 3 points.
Addy, you're next. Do you remember them, or do you want me to say?
The only thing I can remember is that I predicted Verstappen getting pole position, which
Correct.
didn't happen.
That did not happen.
And I think I also predicted Verstappen winning the
Yeah,
race.
you predicted a conversion.
I don't think I did that well, so
Yeah,
just
so-
roll it out.
Okay, so Addy, like you mentioned, Verstappen pole to win conversion, 0 points either way. You put Norris in second, so you did, I guess, get the right McLaren leading. So 1 pointer there because he was one position off. Third place for Lewis Hamilton, which was 0 because he was not there, not within one of thingy. And then Oscar Piastri was in fourth. He finished in fifth, so that gives you 1 point. You'll take it because
Take anything.
you're currently looking like a bit of a beggar at the moment.
Yeah.
So number of points.
It's okay. Don't worry.
It
It's
happens.
fine.
You know what?
I have enough experience as a Ferrari fan with begging.
Please, Ferrari, save me.
Next
You know-
year is your year.
Oh man,
Get that.
this is why I watch other racing disciplines to make me more happy.
George Russell in fifth, and he finished seventh,
Seventh.
so no points there. So 2 points out of your top 5. I don't think I did very good here either, so let me rattle mine. I don't know if it was as bad as yours, Addy, though.
I think you'd have to do quite well.
Okay. Oh no, I've beaten you, don't worry.
Oh.
I'm happy. Okay, so I also predicted a Verstappen pole. I didn't predict the conversion though, because I said Oscar Piastri wins. Either way, 0 points for either of those. I did say Lando Norris finishes in second. I'll get a point for that. I then said Verstappen in third, so I predicted him to stop first, finish third. Somehow that's worked out for me. We'll take those 3 points and run. I then said George Russell would be in fourth. No, less said the better. And Carlos Sainz, even less said than the previous, the better.
Oh god.
I have
Well
faith
done.
in Williams, and you know what? I will never have faith in them again.
I distinctly remember you saying last week that Carlos Sainz was going to be on pole, get a 5 second, get a
No,
5
yes,
second
yes,
penalty,
this is
and then
why.
overtake one person.
Yes, this is why. So I'd kind of forgotten entirely about the fact that he had a 5-place grid penalty, which I found was a bit strange that he carried over. I don't think it was that deep. But
It
you
is
know,
what it is.
it is what it is. It's
We
screwed me
talked
out
about
of
that
points,
in both last episode and I think also the episode before. So
which we recorded at the same time. So
In complete darkness.
in complete darkness. So you know what?
Halloween came early for
Yeah,
us.
I think my head was fried when doing.
I mean,
that
given how
prediction.
long we've been recording for, it is nearly dark outside.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. But 0 points for Russell and Sainz. Lucy, kick us off with your random and DNF.
I
Do you have
said
any more luck?
I said Piastri was going to DNF.
No.
He didn't. I was also thinking that the McLarens were going to drive into each other, and maybe they would have done if they were anywhere near each other on track. It really shows something that I was hoping towards the end that Piastri might get lapped, so that my prediction could come true. And then I did my weird thing, which was no 2 teammates start on the same row of the grid, and I've got up the starting grid, and I think I'm good for that. I don't think any teammates started next to each other on the grid.
Can we get some verification on that?
Because the only time that the teammates qualified started directly next to each other were Leclerc and Hamilton, and Leclerc was on the front row and Hamilton was on the second row, so I think I'm good.
Yeah, you're fine with that one then.
Yay!
You got-
Yay! I did something!
I think we did say in that episode that we were. It was a little bit. It was a
Yeah,
little,
I know.
yeah.
But I got to.
gamble.
No,
I gotta
it
check
was too little of a gamble
It was
for
too
a
long.
random.
I won't do anything like that later, but
No, I
I'm
think
sorry.
we'll because we did allow it in the episode. You can't retrospectively.
You can't just say no, you don't get it.
As much as I would love to.
My random prediction is has double points.
Shut up. Alright, we'll move on. Oh, I remember my random prediction. Anyway, Alex, do you remember your DNF and random prediction, or do you want me to go through it with you?
DNF Straw, why is this guy not crashing?
He's
This
the
is so
GOAT.
unlike him.
He's the GOAT. That's what it is. Let's.
He gets it all out of his system earlier in the weekend now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's worked out the play. He's like preempting it.
Just crashing in a freaking FP1, FP2.
Yeah, but no crashes in the race, which is It's kind of incredible for Lance Stroll.
And random 2 safety cars, there were 1, and a controversial one.
No,
And it was a VSC,
We don't,
which we
VSCs
didn't count
we don't
anyway.
count as a real safety car. So
VSCs aren't
honestly,
real.
can we get VSCs out? They're woke nonsense. Let's get some real safety cars, please. Please and thank you.
You really got to feel that, like, Bert Mylander needs his job back. Like, he
He's
just out of a job.
Yeah,
He's
he's
just-
just
Employ
chilling.
that man.
It's fine when the sports series are there, though. He's guaranteed.
Yeah, that's so true.
When F3
When
are
F2
about,
when
F3
F2 is there,
F3
yeah.
and F2 are about, like, his services are well and truly needed. But no points there. So, Alex, you finished on 3 points for this week. Daniel, how about you? What are your random and DNF?
No luck. DNF Sonoda, random prediction. One of the drivers who are on at least 5 penalty points going into the weekend will get more penalty points. The only driver who got a penalty, the only drivers, Hamilton, no. Sainz, no. Sainz decides to get a very ironic drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane.
Which
that was really fun.
I don't think he could have done anything about.
I
No.
think his brake, it was something to do with his
I think it was
brake
pit
limiter because he
limiter.
kept
Yes,
getting
it was
penalties.
it was the sensor. So
Yeah.
when Lawson, when Sainz collided with Lawson at the first corner, what happened was Lawson damaged the wheel hub of Sainz's left front tire, which is where the sensor and the little ring that measures the revolutions per second in the wheel is, and then the sensor basically measures the changes in magnetic field strength to work that out, and then that gets sent to the ECU, which is the electronics control unit, and that went haywire because it's like, oh my god, I don't know how many revolutions per second we're getting because the sensor's damaged. So the revs were just basically being everywhere, up and down. So
Because it was simply confused.
Yeah.
that resulted in the jumping that you saw in the pit lane as well, was the variation in revs that Sainz was getting.
Admittedly, I'm surprised Williams didn't fight that. But okay, I guess you can make the argument of if it was unsafe,
Then
that
why didn't you
didn't you retire the car? That which is I can understand from that perspective.
And then when he was retiring and pulling into the pits, he would have got another penalty
Yeah.
for speeding in the pit lane anyway, and then it would have carried over. But whatever.
I mean, I think it was a tough thing because you can make the argument of he wasn't in control of it. He was trying to go as slow, like to the limit, but you can also make the argument of Williams should have pulled that in because it's unsafe.
I mean, at the end, he really was trying to go as slowly as he could.
Williams had a horrible weekend. Let's be real. Albon had
We
no.
laugh, otherwise we don't cry. I say we, it's
You.
just me.
Addy, hit me with yours.
I'm pretty sure I went with a Charles Leclerc DNF,
Yep, did
which
not happen.
didn't happen, thank
Oh.
God. And then I went for, I think, a red flag,
And
which...
I think it's almost as if me, Daniel, and Lucy warned you.
Maybe,
about this.
but
You were going to go for a red flag and a
I
safety
was.
car.
No, but I think based off lap 1, I thought, oh, maybe I might actually be onto something here, because lap 1 was absolute insanity, but then it just sort of petered out. But
This is why you make vaguely quali adjacent predictions, so that
I'm
then
sorry.
you can have a
You
relaxing
were
time
lucky.
during-
You were lucky that we allowed it, though.
Yeah.
We will not.
I
me
got
and
in
Daniel will-
early, so
Yeah,
you
me and
could
Daniel
press.
will put our foot down for the next one.
Yeah,
You are not
okay.
going to be allowed.
so, only
What
2
about
points, but at least
15 points in this session.
Only 2 points, but at least got that prediction that Haas were going to do okay.
Yeah.
Which doesn't earn me points, but it's just nice. to know
Earns
I
you
kind
street
of-
cred. And street cred is ultimately
We
more
will let you
important.
back on the podcast.
And I don't think I had much luck with my random prediction and thingy either, because I said Oliver Bearman was my rookie of choice.
Didn't go so well for you there.
Yeah.
When does it
Yeah, do
ever
you
go
want
well?
to talk about it?
When does it ever go well for me? That's the point. Yeah. Like
It's okay.
I will still commit to the fact that I am going for rookie. I'm saying it now. Rookies are going to be my DNS for the rest of the season.
What happens
committing
next?
to the bit.
What happens if next year there are no rookies?
Oh well, next year's a new year, new me type of thing. But
Aren't they going to get Lindblad though?
Oh yeah, that's okay.
Exactly.
Are you just going to predict it every
unfortunately,
week?
unfortunately, Limbad, it's over for you all.
I might predict Stroll every week, because surely you must DNF.
No.
No, Stroll's locked in now.
He's a real
He
one.
only DNFs when it doesn't matter.
I also said that 2 different constructors that weren't top tier teams would get double points, and I think we established we were ignoring the top 4 teams, so McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, Merc, and unfortunately there was only one team who got double points that weren't those, and that was Haas. I only did 2, so I was kind of banking on a few retirements or a few incidents here and there, but no luck for me there, which means that the total points tally for this episode, I got 4. Lucy, you got 8. Alex, you got 3. Daniel, you got 3. And Addy, you got 2. So
Yay!
it's an episode where somehow Lucy's won again.
Somehow.
Yes,
honestly.
somehow. I no respect. No, you'll never
What a
get the
hater.
The has double points made it.
No, that you shouldn't say that.
That wasn't.
That was an outside. That wasn't part of the prediction segment. We just said it. But
I said RB anyway.
Yeah,
Thank God
fair
that didn't
play.
count.
You're not winning another one this year, though. So
Okay, you say that. That's what they said about Max Verstappen after Suzuka.
That is true, and he's in a championship battle. Allegedly.
Much like me, no.
No, you're not in any
This
championship
is where Lucy's
battle.
comeback starts.
Yeah. I've left it quite late.
Dunking 10 points on us every weekend.
It's like 15 points, 12 points.
Full on Grand Slam every
Yeah.
single
Imagine the scenes, though. But that brings us to the end of this episode of the Warwick F1 Show. I want to thank all 4 of the guests who've joined me for this episode. We will be back with a preview for the Brazilian Grand Prix next week, which will be a sprint weekend. So double the racing, double the viewings as well. We will do a sprint viewing that weekend and the classic view to the Clarendon. So exciting there. But outside of that, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening and watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.